everyone, welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to do another demo for you, but this time what I want to do is share with you a tip for helping you to create a different kind of mood for your painting. One of the things I really love about painting versus photography is that we have an artistic license to make changes to our photo. If we're working from a reference photo, for example, and we don't like what's happening, or we want to create a different move, or we want to move something around, we have the ability to do that. We have an artistic license and we can do that. And it's actually quite easy to change the mood or really promote a different type of mood or even weather condition in your painting. And it really begins with the underpainting. What you begin the painting with will have an impact on the subsequent layers of pastel that you add. So what I want to do today is take a scene that is a sunset scene, and I really want to infuse it with a warm glow of the sunset. And so instead of using strictly just the local colors of the objects in the scene, I'm going to start the painting with a warm underpainting. So come on closer to the easel and I will show you what I have going on, and we'll talk more about this idea of changing the mood based on the underpainting colors that you use. So before we get started, I'm going to talk about what I have up here already. But if you want to learn more about this idea of color and underpainting colors, we are doing a deep dive on color over on my Patreon group. So if you're a Patreon insider, I'm going to expand on this lesson. And if you're not a Patreon insider, I really would love for you to join us. And of course, like and subscribe and share this video. It really does help share with other people who are interested in pastel. So we want to share the love, so that would really be helpful. I would really appreciate it. All right, so what we have going on here, here's our reference photo. This is, I was camping last week and walking to the comfort station, and I happened to glance over to the right and saw that it was just after the sun had just set, but there was still this really nice warm glow in the air, and even in some of the trees. Although it's not shown in the photo, I do remember it. So I would love to paint this, but give it more of a sunset glow. And in order to do that, I'm going to use warm colors for my very first layer, or underpainting. Now, I already took the liberty of putting in some black, and I'm going to explain what that is in just a minute. First of all, I'm working on a scrap piece of paper. This is actually a piece of board or card that I used some clear gesso that I tinted orange, and I did some random brush strokes so that I could get a rougher texture. And so I just found this in my pile of papers, and I thought, well, this is perfect because it already is a warmer tone. This orange is going to help give me that warm glow, but I'm going to push it even further. And I was only going to just use warm color pastels for this first underpainting, but as I looked at it in preparation for this video, I thought, well, I really want to get the drama of these kind of mysterious moss-covered trees, and I really need that darker value. So I took some Art Graf, I'm just going to hold it up here, Art Graf Tailor chalk. Well, it's not really a chalk, it's kind of compressed ink is what it is. And then I diluted that with some water, and I got this really interesting mysterious looking trees. And I think it's going to be a really good start to this painting. And then after I did it, I thought, this would have been really good for the video. So, guys, if you think you would like to see me do this underpainting in real time, or another one using the Art Graf, let me know in the comments, and we'll plan it for another video. So what I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to add color, but I'm only going to use warm colors. In fact, I'm only going to use 4 values of an orange pastel. Oh, let's see if you can see this. I'm going to use a dark orange, and then 2 middle values, and then a light orange. This is going to be the start of the painting. This is going to be what hopefully will create that glow. So in all the dark areas, I'm going to use, and by the way, these are Nupastels. One of them happens to be a Diane Townsend pastel. This one's a Nupastel. And all of these darker trees, I'm going to just lightly go over with the hard pastel. And by the way, I really encourage you to stick with me to the end of this video. I know oftentimes these demos go into these ugly stages. This is one of them. Usually about 10 minutes in, I lose a lot of you, and I think it's because the painting is in the ugly stage and maybe you think nothing's going to happen. So I really would love for you to stick with me to the end and see if I can pull it out. So those are the dark areas. Now I'm going to put in the light areas, which is really the sky. I'm using a lighter value, orange. You can really see the texture of the clear gesso where I use those random brush strokes. And I think that's going to help give excuse me, that mysterious quality to the trees. Now I'm going to really warm it up with some orange back down where I see where the sunset is. I'm also going to add that orange to the edges of the trees, just because that sunset glow was hitting some of the trees a little bit earlier than that photo was taken. So I'm taking out my artistic license to kind of promote that glow a little bit more. Now we've got some trees that are in the distance, so I'm going to use a little bit of a lighter value of the orange, peachy color. I'm also going to use that in this grassy area. So basically what I'm doing here is I am adding this nice warm orangey colors to the painting on top of those black ink art graph marks that I made a little bit earlier. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of pipe insulation foam, the stuff that you wrap around your pipes to keep them insulated, and I'm going to rub in this first layer. And why I'm doing this is because this is a rough paper, and this helps push the pastel into the grooves of the paper. And that's going to allow me to get more layers, and it also will help me fight the little bits of light that are peeking through. Right? I really don't want to have those little bits of the light tone of the paper. It's a little bit too light. I'm just rubbing everything in. And what I'm left with is a very nice, soft, and out of focus underpainting. And a lot of times I like to take a photograph of my underpainting stage before I start adding pastel. And one of the reasons I do this is so that, I'm going to just do it real quick. One of the reasons that I do this is so that I can preserve this underpainting, because a lot of times I like the underpainting and then I take the painting too far. I add too much detail, I get too fussy, and I really want to keep this loose and painterly and fun and not get bogged down in the details. And sometimes taking a picture of this stage helps me kind of remember. If I take it too far, I can always go back. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start layering my softer pastel. And I'm going to be using Terry Ludwig pastels. This happens to be the Floral landscape set. This is a set that I curated, so I picked out these colors several years ago. And I find that they work just as well for really any landscape. It doesn't necessarily have to be flowers. So I'm going to start with a nice dark blue, and I'm going to go over all of the dark areas. So basically what I'm doing in this stage of the painting is I'm reinforcing the darks. Now one of the other ways to help capture a glow, sunset, or any warmth in a painting, if you want to promote that, I'm going to make this tree a little bit taller, and I don't want them to be the same. Otherwise they're going to be twins, right? Like right now they're almost like twin lollipops. So we got to break that shape up and make it a little bit different. We don't want twins. So what was I saying? Oh, if you want to get a really nice feeling of the light, then you got to make sure your darker areas are dark enough, cool enough, right? I'm going to add another layer of dark. This is a dark burgundy. So this is actually a warmer color, but remember I want to infuse some of those trees with a little bit of that sunset warmth. The trees on the outer areas, those I'm going to end up making cooler. So I'll make those a little bit bluer, a little bit, maybe a little bit of a blue-green in there. Let's get started with that. So I'm going to take a dark value blue-green for these trees in the outer, further away from the sun. They are going to be a little bit cooler. Also down here in the foreground. Alright. You can really see the effect of the texture of the paper. And I know that personally, when I started to use this kind of homemade paper effect with the clear gesso, I struggled with the texture. I fought it. I didn't like it, and it was frustrating to me that I had all these kind of marks that I couldn't control. And when I finally let go and embraced the texture, I started to have more fun with it. Alright, what am I doing now? I have a super dark pastel. This is, if you're familiar with Terry Ludwig pastels, this is what we call the eggplant. And I'm only using it in areas where I really want it to be extra dark. So at the base of these trees, right here in the immediate foreground, and then just in some of the trees a little bit. I really want to promote that feeling of the darker, shadowy, cool areas. I'm going to take actual black pastel right now. This is a Rembrandt. And I'm going to, oh, I got twins. Remember what I said? I didn't want to have twins, so I don't want these to be the same size. So I'm going to give this guy a haircut right now. If I go too far, I'll forget. So let's just add back some of that sky color so that those two guys can be a little bit different. So I'm adding just a few indications of some branches with a Rembrandt, which is a harder pastel, so I can get finer lines. And I'm doing this at this stage because I don't want to go too far without some of the detail. And remember, I don't want a lot of detail. Remember, I want it to be a more loose and painterly interpretation of my photo. Alright, so that's good. I'm going to hold that there in case I need it again. Alright, so now I have all the darks reinforced. The next thing that I usually like to do is the sky, the lightest part of the landscape. But before I do that, I want to put in some of these distant trees, because then that will tell me just how far down I need to pull my sky. So for those distant trees, I'm going to actually use a gray down blue, especially over here in the areas furthest from our sun. And I'm just kind of sticking that blue-gray just to very lightly indicate trees that are in the distance. Now in my photo, those trees are actually have green in them. And so I can, especially these trees right in here, I'm going to use a lighter gray down green just to go over it a little bit. So the combination of the blue-gray and a lighter, duller green will help give me that feeling of trees in the distance. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is work on the sky. I think I want to just get a little bit more of the trailing moss effect before I do the sky. So I'm taking that dark and just pulling my strokes down a little bit just to get a feeling of moss. Alright, let's do the sky. Now, let's start with the most intense part of the sky, which is right here where the sun has set. So I'm using a really intense orange right here at the base of these distant trees. And I'm sneaking that color behind my big trees here, and I'm pulling it over just a little bit further than it is in my photo. And then I'm going to use a little bit of a lighter value orange, pulling it up into the sky, further than it is in my photo. Because remember, I really want to remember what it was just a few minutes before I took the photo when the sky was really glowing. And let's use an even warmer yellow orange. And I'm using this color also to break up my tree shapes, so creating some of those important sky holes. And I don't want it to go over much further. I do like how the sky transitions into yellow and then a little bit of a blue-green. I'm covering up that initial peach color, remember, that I used for the underpainting? I'm covering up now at this stage in the painting, but bits and pieces of it are peeking through, so it gives a little bit of an influence. And I'm going over the tree shapes so that I can, the texture of the paper helps create a little bit more natural looking sky holes. And I really like this. It's really more of a green. Ooh, let's put in some of that green and then put a little blue in it. Again, I don't want to cover up the underpainting completely. I'm just letting some of that peek through. Alright, so there we go with the sky. So then the next order of business is to work a little bit more on the foreground, and then I'm going to come in and refine the trees and then get them to glow. So we've got some green stuff growing in our foreground. Let's get a darker green. Here's a tip. If you find yourself to be a what we might call a type painter, some of us call it, that doesn't sound very nice, but you know, you paint more detail than you really would like. You want to have a little bit more of a looser quality to your work. Doing a rough tone paper like I did here really helps promote a looseness, because you cannot control your marks, right? You don't have total control anymore. You have to give it up a little bit of that control, because the paper, the roughness of the paper doesn't allow you to make the marks that you might. Somehow my tree trunks really shrunk, and I think that's because I shortened this tree and I shortened the trunks, and I'm noticing it now. So what I'm going to do is, I don't want to go too much further before I reintroduce those trunks, because sometimes when you notice things go a little bit off the rails, go ahead and make that correction. Don't wait too long. I'm going to make this tree a little bit taller. Alright, now I have to cover the base of these tree trunks with a little bit of that golden grass. Alright, now I'm not going to worry so much about the detail in the foreground, because really it's not about the foreground. That's kind of in the shadows. It's not really important. What is important are the trees, the moss, and the sunset glow. So let's go ahead and get a few more of those branches back in. Also, one of the other things that I noticed is there's some really nice purple going on in the trees, especially in some of the tree trunks. So let's go ahead and put in some of those right in here. They just have a little bit of a purple to the purple, a bluish purple quality to them. So I'm going to just introduce some of that purple. And the purple plays nicely with all the orange. And this is where we really start to move away from the reference photo. And we can make it work because we have the values correct in our underpainting, right? We started with those rich darks. We added the colors that we wanted so that we had that feeling of warmth in our painting. What is this color? Sometimes my pastels get so dirty that I can no longer tell what's in them. Let's get some of that moss. I'm going to take that dark blue, because remember these trees right here are more in the shadows, so we don't really see a lot of color in the moss. Put some in here. But, and here's the fun part, where they are getting kissed by that sun, I'm going to just add a very light touch of the orange to the edge of the tree and the edge of the trunk. This, I don't see this in the photo, but I remember seeing it in real life. So this is this idea of we have artistic license and we can make changes to give us a feeling of that warm sunlight. The only thing I feel like I need to do is come in and give a little bit more air or sky holes to this tree in particular, and this guy up here. So I'm taking the yellow that I used in the sky just to give a little bit more sky holes and air. And I'm really at the stage in the painting right now where it's important that I step back and try to figure out where the eye is going, where do I want the eye to go, is it working the way I want it to, where do I need to add something, where do I need to perhaps take something away. I think what I'm going to do to finish it is pull out my set of Sennelier soft pastels, half sticks. These are the, oh shoot, Paris collection, that's what it is. And I like these for those finishing touches because they're so super soft. I can just really go in and put some marks right on top, and it just sits so nicely right on top of all my other layers. Again, I've got a lot going on in this painting as far as materials. I've got that black ink underpainting. I have the color dry wash that I used the 4 values of orange. I have the rough texture of the toned paper. So all of these things add together to give me a fun challenge. And I think I'm going to call this one done. I'm going to add one more pop of color right here at the base of this tree, and then because I have a lot of orange, the complement of orange is blue, so I'm going to just add a few strategic little marks of blue just to kind of little pieces of eye candy that just make things interesting. The only thing I think that I could do or I would want to do is perhaps add just a little bit of detail in the grasses just to show that these are grasses. So just a few linear marks kind of to disguise the base of these trees. Like so. And I'm going to call this one finished. So I hope you enjoyed this demo. This would be really fun to do with cool colors underneath instead of the warm colors, and to see what would happen if I changed the underpainting colors. So I think I'm going to do that for another video. But again, if you want to see a video with the art graph, let me know in the comments. And I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Let's paint.